All right.
Great.
So let me, so since we're recording this, and that's so that we can put it on our YouTube playlist, I will throw that link in the chat. And finally, before I introduce Becky, I want to acknowledge the Office of Alumni Engagement's community values. Our mission invokes an environment of mutual respect, free expression, and inquiry. Program participants accept these principles when they join this community, and in doing so, they agree to abide by the following values. The first is to have respect for the rights, differences, experiences, and dignity of others. The second is we express our viewpoints in a thoughtful and respectful manner. And the third is honesty and integrity in working with all members of the community. The fourth is accountability for personal behavior. So now let me introduce Becky. Let's see here. Becky, did you send me the link
I
for
did, yeah. It's
the
shorter one. Did you find it?
updated messages? I don't have it, but that's okay. I will read the one that you sent to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So Becky Farone spent 30 plus years in the tech world, both in industry and team, often as the only woman in the room, along with an unconventional childhood in Vermont, which had her often declaring, "Why can't a girl do that?" She has driven success for multidisciplinary teams and executives at companies like Microsoft, Nike, Starbucks HQ, Kaiser, and Columbia Sportswear. Becky has led multidisciplinary teams and driven success for these companies. And she began her career at Microsoft, contributing to the development of the original Outlook team. In 2021, motivated by a passion to enhance work environments, Becky transitioned from her corporate roles to career coaching. Welcome and thank you, Becky, for joining us. She founded Fireworks Coaching after earning credentials from the Coactive Training Institute and the International Coaching Federation. Specializing in career transitions, Becky helps professional women over 40 to stay or leave distressing work using design thinking, feminism, and thought work. She's spoken to numerous corporate women's groups, including Portland General Electric and North Highland Consulting. Before Nike, she had 2 decades in IT. And she holds, oh, sorry, Becky, go ahead.
No, that was my mistake. So this was
Yeah,
long,
yeah,
everybody. Thank you so
yeah.
much, Nicole, for all the intro. The next part is just about Tufts, and we're almost done.
Well, finally, she holds a BA in art history and American studies from Tufts and has a custom J90. Yep, you're admitting it. Sometimes people don't like to do that. And a customs master's degree in information design and business from Carnegie Mellon. So now let's welcome Becky. Thank you for being here.
Wonderful. All right. Hello, everybody. Looks like there's 54 of us here. So glad to be here. And some of you may or may not have heard a different topic from me back in August. So a tiny bit of them I'm going to say might be familiar, but most of it will be new. So let's go ahead and move on here. So this is me. I'm actually right now in the Portland, Oregon area. Originally from Vermont, and I was in Seattle for about 20 years before that. As you may or may not know, in the Northwest, you're required to have multiple raincoats. One has to be for dressy occasions. So this is the coast here with my husband and my cat. We definitely enjoy living out here, and I absolutely miss Boston and miss the Tufts area for sure. So going to the next one here. So we talked about a little bit when Nicole introduced me about my kind of niche being helping people stay or leave distressing work. And that still continues, but I really noticed that after my business being open for 2 years and almost 500 hours of coaching some incredible clients, that what people come to me for ends up being more about what's underneath. It's more about people really needing help embracing their self-authority and communicating with confidence and being able to advocate for themselves. So the last presentation I did do in August was specifically about how women can find their voice. And this isn't just women. I know there's plenty of men and people at all different stages of your life here today. But what happens, going to the next slides, people really come to me for this self-advocacy, and mental fitness, which is what we're really talking about today with positive intelligence, is a huge part of being able to stand up for yourself. And I wanted to share a little story too before we get much further. The reason I coach, the reason I feel so strongly about helping people find their own self-authority, their own self-advocacy, and really believe themselves is because I had spent earlier in my life 5 years and $80,000 trying to decide to go to grad school. It was a long time to be stuck, and I spent most of that in what you will now learn to find out would be the saboteur frame of mind. And that's a really difficult place to be making big decisions. So, and also what happened is I'm certainly glad I went to a great grad school and have that degree, but it didn't actually solve my problem of what I really wanted to be doing. So that's why I'm here, and I coach people to help figure that out. So here's what we're going to be covering today. So kind of 5 main points. I guess the 5th one is Q&A. I don't know how many people might have heard about positive intelligence. I'm going to explain to you what it is. We're going to talk about your personal saboteurs. Another phrase for that are your inner critics. I have a not really fit for public consumption word for those two, and the sage mindset, and then what you can actually do for daily mental resilience. I have a feeling we all need some of that, particularly right now. So if you take one thing away today, let it be this. You get to decide who to listen to, and not just externally, but internally in your own mind. I'm going to tell you how, and I'm going to tell you why. I wonder if this looks familiar to anybody. Anybody have any of these thoughts today? Did you put on a pair of jeans you haven't worn since last spring? Are you applying for a job right now and it's tough out there? Did someone say something to you that you're really surprised to hear, a criticism, and maybe it set you into a tailspin? So it doesn't have to be this way, but these voices really can cause a lot of damage. So everybody has these doubts and the worries, and they result in self-sabotage. So let's talk about what you can do about them. But before that, so what has happened to you? If you want to either come off mute or put something in the chat, what has happened to you at work or home when your saboteurs or your inner critics had control? Feel free to share for a few minutes.
I have not taken the actions that I should have taken.
Okay, thank you. When this happens to me, I crawl back into bed with the heating pad and the cat. So same thing. Thank you for that. Yeah. And then you just don't do the thing. Yeah. Certainly hard to go do the things, whether it's job or personal related, when you feel like crap about yourself. Anybody else want to throw something out there? Looks like a couple things in the chat.
Yeah, we've got some great things in the chat. I think at this point, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Now people are warmed up.
Great. I actually can't see them. Nicole, are you willing to read them for us?
Right, if you can't see them. So I passed on job offers is one. The second one is mental swirl and lack of action. Then we've got afraid to reach for new skills. Another one, I overwork to compensate, overstudy or overprepare, work overtime. Next one is they were right, even if they were wrong. Fatalistic reality. Staying in your comfort zone. I question myself and my actions. I have the opposite problem. I have a fixed mindset and a lot of ego that has me not test any boundaries, but I think I'm great. Spend time with my dog. Okay, that's a good one. So maybe it's the same. We've got a lot here. Feeling overwhelmed.
Good.
I'm scared.
Thank
I won't
you.
measure up. I could keep going. Two more.
Okay. Okay.
I've been at home. I've been an at-home mom for 20 years and I feel unqualified for anything other than laundry. And finally, I've been out of the working world for several years. No idea how to rejoin.
Yeah.
And
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you some tools today to feel much better about all of those things. And one of the comments reminded me of something. If anyone's a fan of Brene Brown or have done any reading about her, she has this phrase that I think of a lot, and it's called hustling for your worth. So I think that's a lot of what we do when we're in this saboteur, inner critic frame of mind. We feel like we have to prove ourselves. So let's find some new ways of dealing with that. Okay, so what is positive intelligence? So it is the title of a book, but the book is about a concept developed by someone named Shirzad Chamine. And it relates to or refers to the ability to manage one's minds effectively to enhance performance and well-being. And it really emphasizes this phrase I've already mentioned, the importance of mental fitness, which is the capacity to respond positively to life's challenges rather than being overwhelmed by all those negative thoughts and emotions that everyone shared. So you can do something about it. And it's actually based on research. So you can see in the circle on the right-hand side, those are the different areas that the research is really pulled from. And the research figured out that you can actually shift the different parts of your brain from the survive region, which if you've ever been subject to the fight or flight or freeze phenomenon, right? What all came from when we were early humans and there was tigers literally behind the bush. There are no tigers behind the bush, literally, but metaphorically, absolutely. So what if we can find some ways to shift to the thrive region, which is literally a different part of your brain? We'll talk more about that. So the underlying ideas here are also about identifying 10 common saboteurs and 5 sage powers. You can rewire your brain using neuroplasticity and really strengthen the positive neural pathways. So what's in it for you? Let's talk about this. So this all comes from the research that goes into the book. And people who were participating in the research reported these pretty amazing results in performance, stress, better resilient, 80% more resilient. We could all use a lot of resilience right now, and any day of your life, really. Reduce negative self-talk, that's huge. 85% for improved mental health and happier or more satisfied with your lives. I'm sure somewhere along the line, you've seen some other research that talked about beyond a certain amount of salary, for example, people aren't really that much happier, but they don't always realize it. So this is one way to get at that as well. And then stronger relationships. I'm sure many of you here are parents or bosses or leaders or any other kind where you're interacting with people in your community. Imagine if you showed up this way in a more positive intelligence way, the impact that you can have. I will tell you, of all these hours of coaching one-on-one, the number one value I hear from everybody is making an impact, whether the word you use for that is purpose or mission. And this is a great way to do it. And you have full control over how you show up in this way. So let's talk about these saboteurs. So we all have the judge. The judge is not very nice. And the judge shows up because we are judging ourselves. We're judging other people and we're judging circumstances. And all the accomplice saboteurs, I'm going to tell you about a little bit more about these, but all of these types of inner critics, they're just different flavors of the same thing. And they start off in our life as guardians in our life to survive the real or imagined threats to our physical and emotional survival as children when we're young. But by the time we're adults, we don't really need them, but they're habits. They've really literally become grooves in your brain. And this is a way to get really hijacked when you get triggered. So in the next slide, I will show you my own saboteur results, and I'll tell you a little bit about that too. But let's go through each one of the types of saboteurs. So I just mentioned the judge. Primary saboteur criticizes yourself, others, and circumstances. The controller. This drives a need for control, domination, and anxiety over what could happen, possible outcomes. The stickler, this is someone, if you've ever been called a perfectionist, maybe this is you. You're obsessed with perfection, order, and organization. Again, all of these, there's nothing bad about any of these. These are survival methods that we adopted as kids and we forgot to let go of them. So I'm going to keep going. Pleaser seeks acceptance by constantly trying to please others at one's own expense. Hyperachiever relies on the constant success and external validation for self-worth. Restless constantly seeks new activities or distractions, avoiding staying still or focused. Hello, internet. We all have this to a certain extent at this point in time. Hypervigilant, always on alert, consumed by anxiety and fear of potential dangers or failures. So you might start seeing that maybe there's some overlap. the materials in the book, which I definitely have a resources slide here for you to find out more, will explain some of the differences. Avoider avoids conflict, difficult tasks, and uncomfortable emotions. The example I used a little while ago about hiding out in the bed with the heating pad and the cat. I wouldn't say I have a high avoider, which you'll see about the scoring in a minute, but we all have some of this to some extent. That's just an example. Victim tends to feel powerless, martyr-like, or overly focused on painful emotions. And the last one is the hyper-rational, overemphasizes rationality and logic, suppressing emotional connection and empathy. So all of these weaken your mental fitness. And we don't even realize it. We suddenly find ourselves just caught up in all the negative feelings that you all shared. So any thoughts or comments? I just talked for a long time, so I want to see if there's any questions or thoughts. Anything in the chat that needs to be addressed?
I don't see anything in the chat,
Okay.
but for those of you who joined a few minutes late, if you have a question, you can put it in the chat, but you're also welcome to unmute yourself and ask Becky directly.
Yeah, that is fine with me. Okay. All right, so we're going to go on. So how do you know what your saboteurs are? Let's take a look. These are 3 real people's saboteur assessment results. So the one on the far left is indeed mine. So you can get your own results. If this was a longer webinar, I would actually have everybody go take the assessment, and then you could see and we could have a discussion about your own, but we don't. It's a shorter session today. There are links on the resource slide at the end so that you can go get your own assessment results. But you can see here, this is positive intelligence is telling me right here, for me, Steve, and Laura, to the extent that our saboteur brain has control over our more positive or sage brain. So I got a pretty high score there for controller, and it's been consistent. I was trained in this technique 2 years ago now, and I've taken this a bunch of different times, and that score is always the same. So it always surprises me. I think I've learned so much as a human and grown, but that's what happens when I'm triggered. That's where I go. And so you can see, like, I have none of the victim. That's great. Okay. But it's not necessarily bad that I have this controller either, because it's kind of made me who I am. I have a saying, I like to say that some of our biggest challenges in life are our best qualities tipped over just a little bit onto the bad side. So you can imagine I'm a pretty organized person, just for example. And you can see how different the other ones are. So you can see Laura, she has a really high pleaser. Maybe that gets in her way at home with her family, or maybe that gets in her way at work dealing with authority and maybe having some trouble sticking up for herself because she wants to stay safe by pleasing. Or Steve, as the victim, he might feel safest by feeling like he doesn't have any control over the situation. So these are really interesting. And when you do take your own test, you'll get a result. For every single one of these saboteurs, you'll have a whole page of where do they come from? What are the internal thoughts that saboteur is having? What are the lies it's telling you? So again, these are not meant to be negative at all. This is just information that you can use to make some different choices. So the other part, this is actually the PQ quotient. I meant to change that. And this is a second assessment that you can take. And this gives you a more percentage of how much your brain is working for or against you. And you can see people are all over the map. And in the materials and the research, Shirzad Chamine talks about how the goal is to get to 75% as a ratio, because that's when your brain is working for you, not against you most of the time. And so this is just, again, it's information. It's not good, it's not bad, but it certainly does give you some indication of maybe how seriously you should take these inner critics and the inner sabotage that it's causing. People come to me a lot and will have a pretty low score in the beginning because they're unhappy enough or stressed enough to seek out help. And then as we work together, I'll have them take this assessment again and see how things might have shifted in a more positive direction. So, okay, so we talked about the judge. And if you do, maybe this is the second thing, if you take away nothing else but that first thing and this thing, is the more you call out your judge in the moment, going back to the jeans, right? Like, oh my God, I haven't put these jeans on since since April. I can't believe X, Y, and Z. I'm not even going to say it out loud. Right. So, but if you're like, there's my judge, that's not you. Your judge is not all of who you are. That can be really helpful to actually name your judge. A lot of people in my practice like to call their judge Judge Judy. I like to call mine, from the movie Devil Wears Prada, Miranda Priestley. So it's funny, not funny, right? It is because it can help you understand, like, am I actually Miranda Priestley the rest of my life? No, not at all. But if I'm like, there's Miranda again, that helps separate me out. And the second you do, that's a form of intercepting, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. You intercept the power that that judge has over you. So sometimes people can literally hear that judge in a different voice. I had somebody tell me her judge was the bully in high school who always told her she, would never amount to anything. And that bully had a certain voice and was wearing certain things. So if anyone wants to shout out or put in the chat, has your judge come to you while we're talking? Can you recognize it? I'll pause and see if anyone wants to speak up or write up. You're welcome to borrow my judge or Judge Judy.
Someone wrote, sometimes it's my mom.
I've heard that before. Yeah. That's a tough one. Yep. Or another family member or a former boss. Oh, I've had so many people say it's a former boss, especially if it was early in your career. That's tough.
Another person wrote, Vanessa, middle school mean popular girl.
Yeah. So it may not be pleasant to recall these people that had a negative impact on you, but it's really helpful to say, there they are, and that's not me. You got no power here, Vanessa.
And then another person wrote, would like to call it the destroyer.
Yeah. I think Shirzad in his book talks about his being the destroyer. Maybe that's someone who read the book, who knows, or just a common. It does destroy us, though, in all seriousness. If you let these voices always control you, they can do that. So, okay, let's move on a little bit here. So let's talk about some of the science behind the sage. I did mention a little bit of it here, but really the difference between the saboteur and the sage comes down to how our brain handles stress and challenges. So I already mentioned that the saboteur brain is tied to the fight or flight or freeze, and that originates in a part of our brain called the amygdala. So this is, sometimes people call this the dinosaur brain or the oldest part of our brain, and this is the part that reacts to fear and stress. I know a tiny little bit about the amygdala, but what I do know is that it's a pattern-making machine as well. Something could have happened to you that you didn't even remember when you were a kid. And if something similar happens now, it's really easy to have that amygdala get triggered, which is another reason why calling it out, getting into the habit of calling it out, is a really great one to do. If anyone uses the Headspace app, there's actually some of their programs around anxiety do have this concept of labeling that's very similar to what we're talking about here. So when you're operating in saboteur mode, your brain detects something as a threat, whether it's real or not, or just a tough challenge. Not just, but so it triggers these negative thoughts and reactions like judgment, worry, or self-criticism. It might have been helpful at one point, but not in our modern world. So by contrast, the sage brain is linked to a different part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex, where complex, flexible thinking happens. You might have heard that referred to as executive function part of your brain. So this is where you're calm and you can make good decisions. You can feel more confident that you're weighing the pros and the cons. And it's just, you actually have more available to you literally than in the survival brain. I think I've read before that even our vision narrows when we're in that fight or flight. So by contrast, in the sage brain, you have all your faculties literally available to you. So when you're in this mode, you're calm, open-minded, and solution-focused. You're able to see a challenge as an opportunity rather than a threat. It also makes you feel more positive. You can connect better with people and think much more creatively under stress. So yeah, it's a tough place to be if you get stuck in one and don't know how to access the other. So let's talk about that. So one of the ways to actually get yourself out of the amygdala and into the prefrontal cortex, or out of the saboteur and into the sage, is actually thinking about something about gifts. What could this gift, this is a form of interception, what could this situation actually offer you? What could, if you got laid off, you don't want to try to ask yourself these 3 gifts on that day. You want to give yourself some time. But what could a gift be? Oh, wow, I hated that job anyway. I used to work at Nike where there's been, if you've heard in the news, quite a bit of layoffs the last couple of years. I actually used to talk to former colleagues who used to wish they would get laid off. That's a story for another time. But maybe there's something else you haven't thought about. There's a great story in the Positive Intelligence book itself about a CEO who just was in a horrible place with the saboteurs. He the company had made some bad decisions. It was really failing. He had put just about all of his own personal wealth and retirement into the company stock. And so he was pretty upset. So when coaching with the author of the book, Shirzad challenged him to come up with 3 gifts. And one of them, for example, was maybe we can get some new leadership in here that knows how to handle this particular type of challenge. Maybe we can think about how we can redirect the company and create new offerings. These sort of things may not have come to you if you hadn't been challenged so much with what the status quo was. So if anyone wants to shout out or add anything in the chat about a gift that might have come to them from something challenging happening. It's like a lot of, I wish I could see the chat more directly right now. It looks like 45 things in the chat.
Nothing on this.
I have something I'll share.
Oh, great.
I think for me, when I'm an actor, and so I do a lot of auditions, and when I don't get what I'm looking for, I think of it as a redirection towards what I need to find, as opposed to rejection being a reflection upon my skill set or my worth or value. I think of it, no, I'm just being redirected. I'm just, you know what I mean? Just going the other way, man. Going the other way. So
I like that.
That's something I can share. Thank you, by the way, for your wisdom.
Yeah, my pleasure. Redirected. I'm actually going to share that one with my husband. He's a consultant, and I'm sure we've got some consultants here with challenging clients. So I'm going to share the redirected with him. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's talk about the 5 sage powers. And the 6th item you see here is the intercept that I just mentioned. So I'm going to walk through these. There's quite a bit. I'm not going to share every possible thing you could learn about the sages. It's a lot, but I want to give you enough to work with today and walk away with something to do. So one other thing about the sage, 1 or 2 other things is it's easy to think if you're faced with a challenging situation that you have to, I have to use all my sage powers. No, you can use 1, you can use 3, you can use 4. Maybe something else came along and you don't need any of them, but they're things to have in your back pocket that will help shift your mind away from the saboteur. And we're going to talk about some physical things, some mindfulness around physical gestures as well. So let me go ahead and explain these. So the first one, at least on my list, is on the far right, the empathize. So that is shifting to compassion and empathy. You can imagine, I think the person who just spoke up, who's the actor, that form of talking to herself is actually a form of empathy. Say, instead of going to the I suck, you're going to, it's not me, it's them, or I made that up, but you're saying you're being redirected. And you could also do this for other people. Like, what if there's someone at work you really just don't get along with? And your tendency is to want to fight them, whether literally or just in your own mind. What if you start thinking about that person has a family, they're just as busy as I am, they have to go home and have a whole other job, or even if you don't have a family, we all have life pressures. And in the book, there's an interesting exercise. Each one of these sages has something called a power game. And this one is called Visualize Your Inner Child, and visualize the inner child of someone else. So the next one is Explore. So this one is really putting on your non-judgmental hat. This is what will get in the way if you don't, and exploring your challenges with curiosity and openness. So that could look like the power game for this one is called the Fascinated Anthropologist. Put on your Margaret Mead hat. What is actually happening here? Don't judge it. What is actually happening in this meeting with this leader that many of us find challenging? What is actually going on, though, versus what I'm going to walk away from that meeting again thinking, oh, so-and-so sucks. Maybe there's some external factors that you weren't aware of or just found out about that's causing this person to act in a certain way. So this is, I guess, the open-minded approach here. So innovate is thinking creatively and out of the box. This is hard to do when you're in your own world. One thing that really helps is doing brainstorming with somebody else. So back to the classic, what should I do next in my career? A lot of us get stuck, the people that come to me in particular, because they think, I have this degree, I have this experience, I can only do this thing, but now I hate that thing, or it doesn't align with my values. What do I do? And that you swirl a lot in your head. Working with a coach or friend or family member and saying, okay, let's actually innovate every possible idea, even if it seems wacky. So a little story about that. This is not one of my own clients, but a gentleman was working for a travel company and he was really bored and tired of it. And he'd been offered a promotion. He didn't know whether to take it. So he did some of this innovation work and open-minded and thinking about what could be possible, and also paying attention to what was important to him, particularly at that point in his life. And he realized he was able to, he really wanted to be in a sunnier place. He wanted to do something with kids. And he found out that his company was willing to transfer him to Hawaii, kept his job, and then opened a surf school for kids on the side. So there's all sorts of ways that we just, when we're stuck and in the saboteur mind, we're not thinking about other ideas that are possible. All right, so then the next one is navigate. So I just mentioned your values or the values and related relationship to the surf guy. So this is when you're going to go make a decision. What are you aligning that decision with? Some of us want to work in nonprofit. Some of us want to be in a creative profession. Other people, it's more important that they have life balance. And if you're trying to make a decision about what's next and you're not navigating and thinking of those things that are really important to you, it's going to be a bad decision. I definitely have enough of those on my own. Okay, and then the last one is activate. That's where you're focusing all your energy on taking action without distraction. A lot of times, like I said, people get really stuck in your head. And you need to actually take action, even if it's a small piece of action. You've probably heard of progress over perfection. And if you think, going back to the career idea, you've thought of maybe 3 possible alternatives to what you're doing now, don't let them sit in your head. Go start exploring, go talk to people, go ask questions. What information do you even need to know to make a decision here? So there's a lot of things that you can do here that are keeping your mind away from those saboteurs and towards positive action. Okay, so, and the power game actually for the activate one is an interesting one. It's actually, imagine yourself in the future. Maybe you're 20 years in the future. What would your future self think looking back on this decision? Sometimes there's some wisdom to be had there. Okay, again, I was talking for a long time. Is there any questions, thoughts, insights?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay. All right, we're going to walk through a scenario. So I'm sure we've all been faced with this scenario alone or with a partner or with a friend. How do you trim your budget? How would you use the sage powers in this situation? How would you overcome, right over here in the corner, that saboteur that could be popping up when you're thinking, oh my God, I've already cut my budget. I'm not going to live without YouTube TV. Why are you making me sit down and do this? You know, so-and-so. So here's some ways you can go about that. One is you can empathize with each other. I know it's tough. I know the inflation has been crazy. I know you're not sure if you're going to get laid off this year. So let's be kind to each other. Number 2, we talked about the, I'm going to get these in the wrong order. I think this is the explore. Okay, so what are the options? How much are all of these streaming services costing us right now? By the way, this is a real example from my house. So let's go research the ones that we really want and really need. And there could be obviously other budget items that you're thinking about cutting, but this is where we started. And the third one is really innovate. So what are the other ways we might be able to see, or in case of my husband, football, all the Seattle Seahawks games? What are other ways he can do it? And for a while there, he actually did survive pretty well on just listening to the radio. Not his first choice. The fourth one is the the navigate, which is where do our values line up here? Just say one of you is really into making a lot of charitable contributions. And maybe the partner says, do we really have to do that? And there's got to be some compromise there because one of you obviously has a really big value around giving back here. So those are the conversations to have using this power. And the last one is really the activate. Okay, you don't need YouTube in the winter because there's no Seahawks. Let's kill it. Let's actually do the thing instead of leaving it to be open. So these are just some examples of how you can use these. They do not have to be sequential, but this example happened to use all of them. So, all right. So what do you do besides the sage powers that can help you right now in the moment? So these are things, they're called PQ reps. Meditators will recognize them as mindfulness exercises. But what's really interesting here is you can intercept a saboteur using these PQ or mindfulness exercises, and it only takes about 10 seconds to switch your brain away from that inner critic, I'll never get another job, I don't know how to do this, to a more positive place where you have much more available in your executive functioning. And these are just some ideas. You can even combine them. In the research, Shirzad notes in the book that to try to get yourself to that 75 place where you're really running on the positive energy most of the time, he proposes you do 100 of these today. So what is each one? Each one is about 2 minutes. That's a lot. I've never gotten there. When we're doing our training, the goal is to actually do 36 a day. So that would be 36 times 2 minutes. And you can build these up during the day. I like to do them when I'm drinking coffee in the morning and really get myself set up. I did some before this meeting to kind of pump myself up a little bit, and they actually accumulate throughout the day. So if you think about it like a battery, if you're charging your iPhone, you can see each time you do some of these exercises to really support your sage mind, it's building up a battery in the exact same way. So does anybody have any other type of mindfulness they think could help here? Or any experience doing it?
One wrote watching birds.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I actually read some research recently that 30 seconds of listening to bird sound has some of these same effects. I like to do that too.
Holding each finger successively.
Okay.
And then a 10-minute quiet meditation on a comfortable mat or in a chair, focusing on your calm place in your mind.
Ooh, I love that one. Yeah.
And eating mindfully. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just going to say I once went to a beach in Greece and I try to think of that as my favorite place there to have the same thing. Eating mindfully. Yep. That is a really good one. What I really liked about this technique is 2 minutes or 10 seconds if you're really in a bind, right? What if you, in a really tough situation, going back to that really rough meeting, and you excuse yourself and go into the restroom and you do some PQ reps while you're washing your hands and you feel the temperature of the water. You feel the pressure of the water. There's a lot of ways you can build this into what you're already doing.
Got a couple of other ones.
Right.
One is a question about the touching the palm with the fingers. Do you know the brain science behind this?
Is the question specifically to touching the palm of your hand or to just the sensations?
It just says touching the palm with the finger.
Okay. So if you go like this, I don't know how often you do this. It's really sensitive. So it's not science specific to doing this so much as it gives you a lot of feedback in your hand because it's so sensitive that it's easier to pay attention to it. It's pretty tickly.
The last one is journaling on why a personal value is important.
Ooh. Yeah. I love that. Speaking of journaling, this is not anything that came up in the research, but sometimes when people are really stuck, some of my clients in that negative place, and if I'm trying to ask them, well, what do you want? They're like, I don't know what I want. I've been there. And so I say, well, what if you journal for 10 minutes on what you don't want? And so it's another way of getting the stress out and naming it, you're really naming your judge just in a lot of detail. And then you can even go back to that later and pull from that, what's the opposite of the 20 things I said I didn't want. So some good tips. And thank you for those in the chat. Okay. So if you wanted to try this right now, if you haven't already, take about 20 seconds and just, or your sensation of choice. I sometimes like to look at plants too, and just kind of see all the light and the color. What is it like for you to, I'm hoping that you go into your next thing today a little calmer. Okay. All right. So here's my final thought for you, and then some resources and more questions. So we can't control much of what happens. We know this intellectually. We don't always know it emotionally, but you can actually purposely decide to let your sage decide how to reply, how to respond. So hopefully that's helpful. So any additional questions, any final questions here?
Don't see any.
Okay. You're welcome just to unmute and shout something.
Just the resource list. I was
Yeah.
looking for that. So
Great. And before we get to that, I'd like to, ooh, there's a little typo in there. Okay. I like to offer, if you want to, you can click on this or just scan with your phone. It'll get you to this form. If anyone wants the slides and or a complimentary coaching session.
I actually have a question,
Yeah, go ahead.
but I'm gonna let you finish before I
Oh,
do.
no, that was it. That was it for the slide. Just,
Okay. All right.
reach out.
So I want to just make sure I'm on the right track with this, because I am in the place of like needing to choose a different step. I'm an actor, as I had said, and the industry, everything has been really rough since COVID. So I'm having to pivot. And one of the things that keeps coming up is the grief of, I've trained exquisitely and for a long time to be this great actor. But now it's hard to do that and to live from it. So with the grief, is it empathy? It's the empathy that you need to show yourself as like the interceptor, not the interceptor, as
Sage.
the
Yeah,
sage
sage.
tactic.
Yeah.
In terms of being like, girl, it's okay though, because I know you've been through it and you really
Yeah.
did try, but it's gonna be all right. Like I'm on the right path with that. Is there anything else you can think of?
Yeah, I can deepen that one for you as well. So absolutely, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. So let me just give you that, but I think you're looking for something concrete here. Absolutely start with empathy. If in doubt for any of these, start with empathy. And so let me tell you a little bit more about that power game, about visualizing the child. So this may or may not sound goofy too, depending on your your background, but literally find a picture of yourself as a kid. The one that I use, it's a picture of me where I am 2.5. I'm wearing all of my clothes. This is in Vermont a very long time ago. I'm wearing the hat and this handmade sweater, and I got a bag. And that's me before the judges got their hooks in me. That happened to be going to a neighbor's house because my brother was going to be born that day. So when I look at a younger version of me and see these core things about myself that are still there under all the bad feelings, under the grief, under the judgment, under whatever accomplice saboteur, it's very grounding to do. So when I was going through the training, I've tried that, and I try to go back to it and who are you under all of this adulting? And that also might give you some tips on where you want to go next.
I love that. Thank you so much. I will be in touch. You are awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's ways to use more of those sages in your specific situation. I'm totally happy to chat with you about that. So,
oh, what a blessing. Thank you. Thank you.
welcome. So here's the resources. So this, again, if you want the slides and the links, just fill in that form. I'm happy to get it to you. So both of the assessments are here, the Positive Intelligence site, the book. There's some really good resources on the site itself. There's a good article on how to access your inner sage in more detail than I had time for today. And then I wanted to just reference I did borrow that budgeting example from someone else's blog, though I added in my own TV streaming examples because that was real for me. So Okay. So that is what I have for today.
We do have a question, two questions. So let's see. First question is, how do you distinguish normal doubt from pathology or mental illness? Put another way, when does life coaching end and psychotherapy begin?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, because I do go out of my way to make sure people, like, I'm not a therapist. There's a little bit of overlap in the training and the guidance that you have to go through. But I think if you're asking yourself that question, I would be talking to a therapist. So I can't, there's absolutely some of these techniques that therapists use. I've experienced them myself as a patient of therapy. But let me get, there's a very light example of the difference that doesn't address that person's question, but I'll share it anyway. So one way to distinguish is therapy typically is talking about what happened in your past and coming to terms with that and your family of origin and all those, inner child, all that sort of things. Coaching is typically, where do you want to go in the future and how are you going to get there? And what are the gaps or the things keeping you from getting to what you want? So, but as you can see, even in this topic today, we did talk about some childhood things and how you can overcome it. But the approach was, what can you do right now today to apply to your today's situation? They are, yeah, Melanie, both are helpful. Absolutely. And I have sometimes used some techniques that my own therapist shared with me, particularly around some of this mindfulness in my coaching practice. So,
Becky, thank you very much for sharing this in 1 hour, which is amazing. I am wondering, for like, just give me more of a general scenario for stress. Just I think we all have it, whether it's your to-do list overwhelming you, or thinking about what direction you want to take, or what have you. How would you say you could use this? The positive intelligence to sort of deal with that, because I think there's a lot of elements that the sage could help with. There's probably a lot of saboteurs, which are like, oh, I'm going to be perfect with this, so I have to have an exact way of how I'm going to deal with all of this, or whatever. But stress as a generalized topic, how would you approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think I want to rephrase it, make sure I got it. So you're saying
Sure.
it's not one thing, it's another. Life, is that right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, really. I mean, absolutely. Just doing, even if it's only 2 minutes or 30 seconds or 10 seconds once a day. But really trying to get into the habit of just stopping and paying really close attention to a physical sensation. Because like I said, even 10 seconds will get you enough. It will intercept enough off of that mode to hopefully give you a little more capacity in your mind to deal with whatever's most stressful in front of you. And the more you can do, the better. So
great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think, like you said, it sort of just takes your mind to a different place instead of staying within that stressor.
Yes, absolutely. And then the sage part, it's kind of ironic because you got to use your brain to use your brain better. But when you're really in the moment and don't have that capacity to try to think like, oh, is it the empathize? Is it the innovate? It's the physical stuff that's going to get you off the ledge.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Oh, thank you, Melanie. That's very nice. Yes, that's how I know Melanie. She's a wonderful client. We're having a good time. Yeah. So, any other thoughts, needs, concerns, jokes? I'll take jokes.
Nothing else in the chat right now, just some thank yous, which is great.
Yeah, it was really, really, really my pleasure. I love coming to talk to everybody here. It makes me feel like a stronger part of the community, as well as particularly since it's been a while since I've been on the campus or part of the, oh, why did the cat get kicked off the basketball team? Ooh, I want it. What's the answer, Veronica? Oh, it took too many hairballs as the answer. Okay. Good one. Good one. Yep. All right. Well, if anybody wants to, the slides or I just sent out a newsletter today. If anyone wants to even see what that is, or free complimentary coaching session.
Mhm.
I'm happy to help with all of those. So
We'll follow up. We'll send a
All right.
follow-up email to everyone so that they know
Yeah.
how to find you and find that resource sheet, the resources.
yeah, you got it. All right. Well, thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your week. Not
Thank
much-
you. Thank you, Becky.
Thank
That
you.
was great.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Everyone have a great week. Thanks so much for tuning in.